Welcome to the Kennedy One-on-One podcast brought to you by Betika Yatu Tea. Today's show is very special because my guest today is Dr. Vernon Mwaanga. He's an accomplished diplomat who served as ambassador of Zambia to Russia and Zambia's permanent representative to the United Nations. He served twice as Foreign Affairs Minister and 4 times as Information and Broadcasting Minister under various regimes. He's a veteran politician, entrepreneur, author as well. Now, today we're going to hear his story. He is currently chairman and senior consultant at Curry Limited. Dr. Mwaanga, how are you today?
I'm fine, and welcome to my humble abode. Thanks for coming to visit and to have a chat with me.
First things first, I think we should be the ones to say thank you because you've allowed us into your home. And also, it's not easy to, get interviews from accomplished people like yourself. And, we're most grateful. We're very happy to be here, sir.
It's a pleasure for me to have you.
Great. Let's start from the beginning. I know there's a lot of information out there, some of it correct, some of it not. But for us is to just hear your story. We tell the story, and we're hoping to draw some high levels of inspiration from your story. Just on a light note, I know that you were nicknamed Marvin Gaye. What was the reason for that nickname?
It's because I had a lot of Marvin Gaye records and cassettes, and I used to sing Marvin Gaye songs in my house. My children were listening to these songs, and they nicknamed me Marvy. They call me Marvy in brief for Marvin Gaye. So it's they gave me that name. I didn't even know about it until later.
That's what usually happens. In a home, they could even be talking about you and you don't know it's you they're talking about.
Exactly. You just hear them say, "Oh, Marvy has arrived." Marvy. Who is Marvy? I say, you don't know who Marvy is. One of them eventually whispered to me, said, "That is you."
Very, very interesting. Let's start from the beginning, Dr. Mwaanga. Let's tell us the story about where you're born and what kind of a childhood you had.
Well, I was born at Macha Mission Hospital in Choma District, west of Choma town. My parents, my father was called Samson Mwaanga. My mother was Rebecca Mwape. They were both teachers, and I had 4 sisters and 2 brothers. That made 7 of us in our family. As misfortune would have it, 2 of my brothers have gone to be with the Lord. One of my sisters has also gone to be with the Lord. But 3 of my sisters and I are still very much alive. So we grew up mainly as children of teachers. I remember my dad being posted to Nansenga School, which was in Namwala district.
In Namwala, okay.
District, Chief Musulwa's area. And we went there in 1947 and up to 1950. And then he was transferred from there to Livingston, where we spent most of our time. And he was then, he became headmaster at Shungu Upper Primary School, which was the only upper primary school for blacks in Livingston at the time. And my mother was teaching at Maramba School, which is now called St. Mary's Secondary School. And we lived in Libuyu Township in Livingston, just after the first phase of it had been built, So we grew up there.
Very interesting. Now, both your parents were teachers. When you were growing up, what kind of discipline or what kind of growing up did you have, in as far as, your social life and education is concerned?
Well, first of all, my dad was very, very strict about discipline in the house. And also discipline in terms of our approach as his children to education. And each time you got, let's say, 6 out of 10 in maths, you got 4 strokes for missing the other 4.
Yeah.
And he, apart from being headmaster, he was also the English teacher for Form 6 upper and Form 6 lower and Form 6 upper. He was teaching English, was an English teacher, educated at Matopo Mission in Zimbabwe and then later on at Adams College in South Africa. So he was very, very strict about education. And my mother was teaching what was then called domestic science, is now called home economics.
Home economics, yes.
And both of them were very, very strict about our education as their children. Later on, my dad became president of the Northern Rhodesia African Teachers Association, NORATA as it was called.
Mm-hmm.
So each time my class teacher, if I was taken to the headmaster's office for discipline, I was supposed to receive 2 or 3 canes. You know. My father would give me 2 extra ones because he said, "You are the headmaster's son.
You're expected to behave better."
I got 2 extra strokes. In those days, that was allowed, but I believe because of changed circumstances, it's no longer.
Now it's no longer there. Yeah.
Nowadays, and when we got home, I got additional punishment.
Wow.
For that, so I was very careful how I behaved in class because of these strokes, which became a menace for us, the children. So it was interesting, and being a headmaster's son, it was very difficult to misbehave because
everyone is looking at you.
Everyone is looking at you, and they will go and tell your dad things which may not even have happened. You know? They'll go and exaggerate what happened. I remember once on a social note, I was very shy in terms of dealing with girls. You know?
Okay.
So I asked one of my friends, I said, "Can you go and tell that girl that
I like her?
I love her.
Uh-huh.
I want her to be my girlfriend." He said, "Oh, I'll go and tell her." So I waited for him. After 2 days, he came back. He told me that, "Oh, I told her." And she said that she would think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Oh, okay." So after 2 weeks, he was saying nothing to me. So my mother sent me to a bakery, famous bakery in Nivu, then it was called Mponda's Bakery, to buy bread. You know. So while I was in the bakery, you know, I saw this girl entering. She was also buying bread. So I gathered enough courage to go and ask her, "Why is it taking you so long to respond to my proposal?" She says, "What proposal?" "I sent so-and-so, my friend, to come and tell you about my proposal." He said, "No, he didn't tell me about anything. He came and proposed me for himself." I said,
"Wow.
Are you sure?" She said, "Yes." And I told him that I'll think about it and I'll tell him later. So I looked for this friend of mine and I beat him up. So that very day, around 18 hours, you know, I was sitting in the veranda of our house. They'd built these 11 houses for so-called educated Africans in Nivu. We lived in one of them. And I saw him and his father and mother entering our yard. I realized that trouble was coming. So I quickly went to the bedroom. And so I heard them talking outside. "Is this the headmaster's house?" And he said, "Yes." So, "Oh, yeah, we've come to complain about your son. Your son beat up our son. Look at him." So my dad looked at him and then he said, "Hey, Vernon." I said, "Yes, Dad, come here." So I went there. Said, do you know this boy? I said, yes. Are you the one who beat him? I said, yes, I'm the one who beat him. Why did you beat him? I said, well, I had sent him to propose the girl for him. And he went and proposed the girl for
himself.
And the meeting ended up in laughter. Both his mother and father, and my mother and my father, they all burst out laughing. And the matter ended there. They all quietly went back. They said, please don't kill our son next time.
Very interesting. Dr. Mwaanga, I want to ask a question about, when you're growing up, your parents being teachers, did they offer any tuition to you, the children?
No, they always had teachers to give us extra tuition. So they didn't want to get involved themselves. They got other teachers to do it. In my case, I was fortunate because my elder sister, my immediate elder sister's name is Elizabeth, and she's Mrs. Elizabeth Musonda. She's 84. I'm 2 years younger than her. And she started off 2 years ahead of me. And I started getting automatic promotions because the teachers kept saying, no, this boy is too advanced for this class. We'll send him to the next class, to the next class, next class. Ended up finishing school there 1 year ahead of her.
Oh.
Which she wasn't very happy about. But that is what they paid attention to education, but they didn't get involved themselves.
They didn't get involved.
They got other teachers to do it. If it was math, they got a math
teacher.
If it was English, they got an English teacher to do it for us.
Great. Now, growing up as a young boy, I know you went into politics. Is it something that you wanted from a very young age, or you had different aspirations?
I had different aspirations at the beginning because at that time, I didn't understand what politics was in the 50s. But I did have an uncle, a very famous uncle who used to visit my dad by the name of Harry Mwaanga. He was the president of the African National Congress. And each time he was in Livingstone, he came to my dad's house in Nivuyu, not just to discuss politics with my dad, but also to drink whiskey. Both he and my dad were whiskey drinkers. I'm sure you probably know that in those days, blacks were not allowed to buy whiskey.
Okay.
You couldn't buy whiskey, you couldn't buy brandy, you couldn't buy gin, couldn't buy vodka, you couldn't buy wine. You could only buy Castle, Lion, and Chibuku. But blacks who had reached a certain level of education, like my dad,
they were allowed.
There were 4 of them in Livingstone, only 4, who were allowed by permit signed by the provincial commissioner to buy any of those drinks. Those permits were renewable every year. So Mr. Nkumbula knew that he would find whiskey in my dad's house because he was also a whiskey drinker like him. So they would come and sit on the veranda of our house in Nivuyu, D293, and I would be the little boy sitting on the veranda, serving them with water because ice was not a factor. Black townships didn't have electricity in those days. Electricity was reserved for whites. So the only mixture they would have was water. So they would ask me, go and get some water from the kitchen. I would go and get water. And I would be listening to these 2 old men talking. And each time Mr. Nkumbula left our house, the following morning at about 4 a.m., the white policemen came to our house to search. And they always carried a search warrant, which was written, searching for seditious material. And they would wake us up, children, from our beds. Fortunately, we were sleeping on beds, mattresses, under the pillows, the drawers in the kitchen, searching. And so when it happened the 3rd time, I asked my dad, why is it that the police come here? Because I've asked the boys we play with next door. The
Police don't go to their homes.
They did not go there. They just came here. What are you and Uncle Harry doing? My dad said to me, don't worry, son. I will not stop what I'm doing, even if they come here, to quote his words 1,000,000 times. What your uncle and I are discussing is we want your generation to govern this country. We don't want those white policemen who have been coming here and waking us up at 4 a.m. to continue. This is our country. We want our people to govern, not those whites who are from England. That's what this is all about. And for as long as I live, I'll never, never stop supporting this struggle for. So slowly, I began to understand what this was all about. My dad was also a keen listener of BBC. They were talking about the struggles in Ghana, in Nigeria, and he always forced me when I was at home to come and listen to the BBC. So he would say, you hear what is happening in Ghana? They are fighting for independence. In Nigeria, Guinea, they're fighting for Kenya, Tanzania, they're fighting for independence. That's what we want. That's what your uncle is fighting for here. So slowly it became clear to me that this is something we had to fight for, because even in shops like ShopRite now, blacks were not allowed to enter. There was a shop called OK Bazaar in those days. You couldn't enter the shop. You had to buy through the window. You couldn't enter a chemist. Residential areas were segregated. Blacks lived in separate areas. Education was segregated. The health facilities were also segregated. And one day, just to prove that point to me, my dad said, can you accompany me? I want to go to town. By town, they meant the shopping centers in those days. So I went with my dad and to one of these departmental shops, and using one of these windows where the blacks used to buy things from, my dad told the salesman, a white salesman, a young man, said, I want that bicycle over there. The young white man said, that is a very expensive bicycle. So my dad said to him, do you know what my means are? Did I ask for the price? I said, I wanted the bicycle. Yeah. Get that bicycle. That's what I want. That's not your business to decide whether it's expensive or not. I'll make that decision. So the white young man was in shock. So he told him, oh, the bicycle is so much. So my dad produced the money and paid for it. And then they came and said, can you come to the front door of the shop to take? And my dad said, no, I'll take it through the window. I bought it through this window and you have to pass it through this window. So there was an argument between that young man, then his manager came, then they called the police. And the police came, the white police, and they explained what had happened. They said, they came outside where we were. I said, who is giving you trouble? They pointed at my dad. They said, this man. I said, oh, Samson Mwaanga. I said, we've had enough trouble from this man. Please, can you just give him his money back? So my dad said, you see what I always explain? It doesn't make sense. They make you buy a bicycle, an expensive bicycle, and then they ask you to come to the front and collect it. I said I wanted to pass through this window.
This very window.
I bought it through here. So those are some of the ridiculous things which used to happen at that time. And as I grew up and began to understand a little more what was happening because of these interactions with my uncle, Harry Mwaanga Nkumbula, I took an interest in the struggle, and I made a decision that I'll make a contribution. I was determined to make a contribution to the struggle for independence so that our country would become independent as well. So the disappointment for my dad and for my uncle Mwaanga is that when I decided to join the struggle, I said that I would join the struggle through UNIP because ANC was not sufficiently aggressive against colonialism. I was more inclined to join the struggle through UNIP because UNIP was more aggressive towards the struggle. And my views were more radical than those of the ANC. So my dad, when I decided to join the struggle, he didn't talk to me for 3 years.
Oh, was he on the ANC side?
Yes.
Okay.
The Northern Rhodesia African African Union of Teachers was very supportive of the ANC. Because that was the only party at that time. Mr. Ngangula and Dr. Kaunda, they were elected to positions of which they held. In 1952, Mr. Ngangula became president of the ANC. Dr. Kaunda became Secretary General. And that carried on until 1958, when the radical members of UNIP, the Kapwepwes, the Naumino Mundias, the Justin Chimbas, the Munuka Mbasipalos, the Scotta Winners, the KKs, and them, they decided that the ANC was not sufficiently aggressive, and they formed a new party, which was called ZANC, Zambia African National Congress. KK became president, and they were a lot more aggressive in pursuing colonialism. So after ZANC had been in operation for a few months, 8 or 9 months, the governor of Northern Rhodesia then was a man called Sir Arthur Benson. He banned ZANC on the orders of the colonial secretary in London, who was Lennox Boyd at that time. And the leaders were arrested, sent into prison. Some of them went into
hiding.
Some of them went into rustication camps where they were held in detention in rural areas. KK, I remember, was sent to Northwestern Province. And in areas where these leaders were being sent, the population was told in advance that these people who were coming there were criminals. They should not go anywhere near them, which was not true. But it didn't take long for the people to understand that, in fact, that was a lie. These were their leaders. They had put into detentions and into prisons. So they started taking food to them. They started visiting them and telling them not to lose faith in the struggle for independence. So when they were released in 1959, before they were released, Mines Chwana had formed a party by the name of UNIP, UNP. And he was acting president of that party. After he was released, he then invited all the people who had been detained and put in prison from ZANC for a meeting. And at that meeting, he handed over the leadership to President Kaunda and said, I was just warming up the seat for you. The presidency is yours. And the party was then renamed UNIP, United National Independence Party, as we know it today. So that is how I ended up joining
UNIP. So
1960.
Your uncle, that's the man who the airport in Livingstone has been named after.
Yes.
Interesting. So at the age of 20, you started, you got your first appointment.
After independence, yes. We struggled. We had internal self-government first from 1962 up to 1964. Then we had elections in January 1964. Kaunda became prime minister until midnight on the 23rd of October 1964. And then he became president. The title changed from prime minister to president. But prior to that, I had been sent on a youth leadership program myself by President Kaunda to the United States. I spent several months, 6 months, and I met Martin Luther King and the three young reverends who were with him. One of them was Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson, yes.
In Atlanta, in Georgia. And then later I was sent to the Diplomatic Institute at Oxford University, and after I had finished doing my course there, I was then seconded to the British Embassy in Rome as a second secretary trainee. And I was there until September 1964. I came just before independence of Zambia in 1964. And we had another course at NIPA then. NIPA had just opened, the National Institute of Public Administration had just opened, and we did a course which was organized by the London School of Economics. So then we were called one by one by Dr. Kaunda, including some of my close friends were Rupia Banda and Alex Yukwanda. Alex Yukwanda was in Sweden then. We were called one by one, and Rupia Banda was appointed ambassador to Egypt. I was appointed Deputy High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. And I requested him, and the foreign minister then was Mr. Simon Kapwepwe, to allow me to stay on so that I could see the Union Jack come down on Independence Day. I said, I beg you, please, I want to see that Union Jack come down. That's what we fought for. I said, well, we understand your feelings having come from the struggle. They allowed me to stay until after we had gained independence. So I went to the stadium and I sat just behind Mr. Kapwepwe and Dr. Kaunda in the Independence Stadium, and I watched the Union Jack coming down and the Zambian flag being hoisted. And 2 days after that, I left and went to London and took up my position as Deputy High Commissioner.
At what age was that?
20. I was 20 years
but
young.
That was a pretty, very young age.
Very young.
Do you think you were mature enough at 20 for the job?
Well, I had already been trained for the job. I had also been attached to the British Embassy in Rome and the British Consul General's office in Genoa on the western side of Italy to do consular work. So I had been sufficiently trained. I was one of the very few people who had been sufficiently trained and even did practical work in diplomacy. So I think that Dr. Kaunda was convinced that I had been trained sufficiently to be able to live up to the expectations of the country. A lot of the people who were appointed into the Foreign Service had never been trained anywhere.
So you had a bit more experience.
They learned it on the job.
On the job.
But I had been trained for it, and I also was put on practical work to do diplomatic work as a second secretary trainee under a man called Douglas Hurd, who later became British Foreign Minister. When I was Foreign Minister here, the first time, he was also Foreign Minister of Britain. United Kingdom.
What was it like working with the late Dr. Kaunda? I'm told he was a disciplinarian.
Oh, yes. He was a great disciplinarian. He was a disciplinarian. He was also a very strict timekeeper.
Okay.
If he gave you an appointment for 13 hours and you were late for 5 minutes, the appointment was cancelled.
Wow.
So he taught some of us to observe time. And having been part of the British Foreign Service as a trainee, where they observed time strictly, and then working under Dr. Kaunda, who was a strict disciplinarian, we got to a point where in cabinet sometime, Dr. Kaunda, if ministers were late for cabinet, they were sent away, and told to attend the next meeting. So people learned to be disciplined, and he gave me a personal award and said, the award goes to this young man. He's the only minister who has never come to cabinet late. Partly because of the training and also partly because of the mentorship which I was given by Dr. Kaunda, who was a disciplinarian and also a very, very strict timekeeper, because for him, even in my personal life, if he had something which was disturbing, he would call me and said, this is what I've heard about this. Be careful, young man, don't do this, don't do that. And so he was like a father to me.
Mm-hmm. Now, other than him discharging his duties as president of the country, did you ever spend time with him, doing anything social? I think he played a bit of golf.
Yeah, we played a bit of golf together, but we also did quite a few things as family, more or less. As you know, he had a large family, a number of children. Mm-hmm. And as they were growing up, some of them needed help put into schools and things like that. And we would also sit down and talk about a lot of things with him. And I would ask him about the early years, what happened when he was a teacher, and how he was able to change from being a teacher, transform into a politician and a labor mission, and etc., etc. And he would explain how his parents moved from Malawi in those days, Nyasaland as it was called, and to northern Rhodesia. I spent a lot of time with him on a social level. Sometimes he would just invite me for us to have lunch, the two of us, and just to talk. And I appreciated that, because I learned a lot from him, a lot of knowledge and also a lot of seriousness in terms of approaching issues which confronted the country.
That was very interesting, because I remember back in the day when I was a little boy, I noticed that people loved Dr. Kaunda, but also they feared him quite a lot. So you sitting down, having a social time, it's quite something.
For me, I didn't fear him. I respected him, greatly respected him. Mm-hmm. I was very fond of him. And even in UNIP, during the struggle, when we used to have leadership elections, at Mulungushi Rock, there were times when a few elements within UNIP wanted a change of leadership. They didn't want Dr. Kaunda. They wanted somebody else to. We said no. We had a group there which was called the Casablanca Group of young radicals with radical views. Myself, Alex Chikwanda, Justin Kabwe, Zeni Njovu, Jethro Muti, to mention but a few. And we were very influential within UNIP itself. And once we said no, it was no. And we were there, we said no, we didn't want any change of leadership, because Dr. Kaunda stood for one Zambia, one nation, and that he respected every single tribe in Zambia, and that is what we wanted the country to be. So we always stood by him, and we said that this was the best man to become president. And what a lot of people probably don't know is that in the Independence Constitution of 1964, which was finalized in London in May 1964, it is written in the Constitution that the first president of Zambia shall be Kenneth David Kaunda. The British had never, ever done that before. But in the case of KK, they did that, because they too wanted him to be president, because they felt that the first president, they felt that they could do business with him. And that some of the colleagues that he had around him were too radical. Huh?
Now, Dr. Mwaanga, I want you to walk me through your appointments as they came.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, I was appointed Deputy High Commissioner in October 1964. Then in July 1965, I was appointed ambassador to the Soviet Union, which is now called Russia. In the past, it was called Soviet Union. USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. All those, Georgia and Ukraine, they were part of the Soviet Union. And I was also accredited on an extra basis to Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and East Germany. I covered those countries from Moscow. And I served there until 1964, until 1966. And then I got an urgent call from Dr. Kaunda. He said he wanted us to meet. He wanted me to come to Zambia. In those days, calling Moscow, it used to take me, you had to book the call for at least 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there was no direct dialing in those days. You had to book it through the operator.
Mm-hmm.
And so he talked to me on the radio, on a government radio, which we had installed to make communication easy. So I said, how soon do you want me to come? He said, immediately. So I said, okay, let me just find out what the airline schedules are. So the very next day, I got on to British Airways, flew to London, then flew to Lusaka. I arrived in the morning and I was told the president to see you at 17 hours. And I went to State House to see him. And he said to me, young man, I'm sorry I had to call you in such a hurry. I want you to become, to help me set up the Zambia Intelligence Service. At the moment, it's part of the police. It was called Special Branch under the police. But the trend in the world is that these services become independent civilian services. So I want you to set up an independent service, and you carry the rank of permanent secretary. I was appointed PS, President's office, but privately, my official title was Director General of the Zambia National Intelligence Service. So I set up the service as he had directed and got some of the people who had been in the police. 60% of them didn't make it. I sent them back to the police and started the training both here and abroad. And after the service had been set up, I told him that I still wanted to get back into the Foreign Service. And he said, yes, that was the agreement we made when I was appointing you. I've got a position, I'll tell you in a few days. And after 8 days, he called me and said, congratulations. I said, for what? He said, he handed me a letter. So I opened the letter and I had been appointed ambassador to the United Nations in 1968. And so I went to the United Nations. I was there for 4 years. 2 of those years I spent on the UN Security Council. I was elected to the UN Security Council. I even became president. I was the youngest ambassador at the UN and the youngest member of the Security Council and the youngest president of the UN Security Council. And I became president of the Council for Namibia. And I also became president of the UN Scholarship Fund, which was responsible for issuing UN scholarships. I served until 72, and I came back in 72. Before I came back, the Secretary General of the United Nations, it was Kurt Waldheim at the time, who had taken over from Utant, who had been Secretary General when I presented my credentials, called me and told me that, Ambassador, I understand that you are leaving. I said, yes, I'm leaving. We've started packing, getting ready to go home. And he said, I've got an offer for you. I said, offer? I said, what offer? So he handed me a letter where he was making an offer to me to be appointed as Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations in charge of Africa. I was flattered by that appointment, but I said to him, Secretary General, this is a very important appointment you have made. But unfortunately, I came here to serve the Zambian people as appointed by my president. I cannot accept any other appointments. And my understanding was that when I get back, the president will give me something else to serve because I want to serve my country. That's why I joined the struggle for independence. So I regret that I'm not able to take up this job. And the Secretary General couldn't believe it, that I turned it down. And guess who was appointed Assistant Secretary General? Kofi Annan. Who later became Secretary General of the UN himself. So I came back home and became editor-in-chief of the Times of Zambia from 1972 up to 73. Then I was nominated to Parliament in 1973 and appointed, on the same day, appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. I was 29 years of age at the time when I first became Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I served as Foreign Minister for 3 years. After that, I went into the Central Committee of UNIP. And then later on, I was appointed as I left the Central Committee and I became chairman of the Zambia Association of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, ZACI, and I also became chairman of the Bank of Credit and Commerce, Zambia Limited, BCCI, and I served as BCCI chairman for a number of years. And then a time came when I said to myself, I better go and see President Kaunda to see if he can agree on returning Zambia to multi-partyism.
Okay, and why is that?
Because Zambia had been a multi-party state from 1964 up to 1973. And I was a strong believer that the people of Zambia must be given options, political options, to choose between different political parties, not just one.
Not just one.
And apart from that, the Soviet Union at that time had just broken up into 15 independent republics, including Russia, and Georgia, and Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, etc., etc. And they were all moving towards multipartyism. West Africa was moving towards multipartyism. There were debates in East Africa about multipartyism. I said, why should we be the last people to go multi-party? No, let me go and see President Kaunda and see if I can urge him to have a referendum so that the people of Zambia can be enabled to have political choices.
How did you take it?
Well, I went to see him. He gave me an appointment, and when I told him about it, he was very angry with me. Very angry with me. He almost chased me out of the office.
Yeah,
which shocked me.
Maybe the way you approached the issue.
No, I approached it with the greatest respect, saying that we have always been leaders in advocating for issues. No, why don't we lead this campaign for multipartyism? So I told him, I said, if that's the case, the president was angry with me. I said, I'm resigning. I'm going to resign from UNIP today. And in the afternoon, I went and handed over my letter of resignation. And then we formed an informal organization, which was called MMD, to campaign for multi-party policy.
Yes.
We formed it initially as an NGO, because there was only one party which was recognized under the one-party constitution, and that was UNIP. Then I went to see President Nyerere of Tanzania. I had two presidential mentors. There was KK and there was Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. to explain to him why I resigned, because I thought that he would need to know. So I called the State House in Tanzania, and they told me that I could go and see. The president was ready to see me, so I went there. They sent me a car and staff to meet me at the airport, took me to the hotel. They told me the appointment was in the afternoon, 17. They came to pick me up. I went to see President Nyerere, and we sat down to talk about it. And I said, well, I wanted you to know why I resigned. It was over the multi-party issue. I wanted President Kaunda to call a referendum so that we could have multi-parties. Let the people decide whether we should remain one party or go multi-party. Because when one party was introduced, the people were not involved. And I had taken to President Kaunda the statement he made when one party was being introduced in 1972, when he appointed the commission under Mainza Chona. The statement stated that my cabinet and I have decided that Zambia shall be a one-party state. The people were never involved.
People were not involved. Yet.
No. So I wanted the people to be involved. So when we started, I told Mwalimu, he said, he used to call him by his first name. You mean Kenneth didn't want that referendum? He said, but here in Tanzania, we are going to have a referendum. Why didn't he want a referendum? I said, I don't know. So he said, anyway, don't worry, I'll talk to him about it. So we chatted and we had a drink, and then 2 days after that, I came back. And obviously they talked, and after 3 weeks, Dr. Kaunda called me.
I actually wanted to ask, I said, what was your relationship like after that?
No, for me, I maintained the respect for him all through and through.
Yeah. And
so he called me, and I went to State House, and he told me that, oh, I see you have been to see your other mentor. I said, yes, Mr. President. He said, okay. As a result of that discussion, I reached certain decisions. First of all, he said, I want to apologize to you for the manner in which I treated you when you came last time. There were too many things in my head, and I shouldn't have spoken to you the way I did. I said, well, I will not hold it against you, and if there is something I said which may have offended you, please, I also ask
apologize
for forgiveness. So he got up and we hugged each other. Then he said, well, I've got some good news for you. I've now decided that we're going to have a referendum. I said, oh, that's wonderful. So I said, that's wonderful. I said, we'll campaign for a yes vote. And we'll campaign for a yes vote. He said, don't tell any of your colleagues, I'm just telling you. I'm going to Cassava Bay to rest, which was his usual resting place. While there, I'll announce that there'll be a referendum. But don't say anything until then. I said, you can trust me. I've been your DG and I know how to keep secrets. And I never said anything to any of my colleagues. And for sure, he announced it there. And then I issued a statement to welcome it. And the referendum question was, do you support the return of Zambia to multi-party politics? We were campaigning for yes, and UNIP was campaigning for no. And the rallies we addressed under the referendum commission, we registered MMD as an NGO to campaign for a yes vote. And we had the biggest rallies ever seen in this country. And I think Dr. Kaunda realized that this question was going to be embarrassing for him, the outcome of the referendum. So a few days before the referendum, he called me again. And I went to see him, and he said, I've decided that I'll call off the referendum. I said, call it off? He said, yes. Why? I said, no, because I realized that it's not going to get us anywhere. So I said, what are you going to have in its place? It says, I'm going to ask Parliament, the one-party Parliament, to revoke Article 4 of the Constitution of Zambia, which only recognizes UNIP as the sole political party, so that other parties can also participate. I said, for sure? He said, yes. said, Mr. President, that is a very good idea. We'll support that, provided you stick to it. But if you change your mind, I can assure you that we will get back on the streets to campaign for multi-party politics. For sure, it was gazetted, and the law requires that before it goes to Parliament, it should be gazetted. Changes to the Constitution must be gazetted for at least 30 days, which was done. It went to Parliament, discussed, agreed, and Dr. Kaunda on 27th December 1990 signed it into law. Then on the 4th of January 1991, we registered MMD now, not as an NGO, but as a
Political party.
Yeah.
Great. Now, all this time, Dr. Mwaanga, were you married? Did you get married? What age were you?
I got married very early, 1965.
At what age?
I was 21 years.
Okay.
When I got married. I got married just before being appointed ambassador. The first marriage before I went to the Soviet Union, as it was then called. And I've been married a few times. And I'm one of those who believed at that time that if a marriage didn't work, both sides agreed to go their ways. They should go their ways, and they went. The ex-wives went their ways. We parted as friends, not as enemies. I went my way, and some of them had more intricate issues, to put it mildly, which I even omitted to say in the books I've written, was I didn't want to be able to create an enmity between me and my ex-wives. And a number of them have passed on since, and that is what happened. I got married and went to Moscow with my first wife, and came back. Went to the UN with my first wife and came back.
Okay, so now as a young diplomat, you go into these countries. How were you managing? Because obviously there's cultural differences, language, food, and all of that. How were you navigating through life with those into consideration?
At diplomatic school, we were taught that the role of a diplomat is to manage whatever situation you are faced with. That we're going to deal with complex issues having to do with the world. If you recall, at that time, there was a Cold War between the East and the West. The East led by the Soviet Union, the West led by the United States of America. There was a Cold War between the East and the West. We opted to become a non-aligned country, and which was misunderstood to a very large extent by a number of countries, both in the East and in the West. In the West, they thought it was a camouflage for supporting the East. In the East, they thought it was a camouflage for supporting the West. So which means we had taken the right position. Non-alignment, as I've said in one of my books, is not neutrality. It means that you examine each issue on its merit and make a decision. You don't decide because you are from the West, therefore whatever the Western countries have decided is right. We always took a stand which was in our best interest. So it wasn't too difficult to manage food issues, for example, in Moscow. And Moscow had a lot of different types of food in restaurants from different members of the Union, Soviet Union. Some food from Georgia, it was very different. Food from Uzbekistan was different. Food from Ukraine, it was different. And we had students studying in these areas who had been given scholarships in early years through UNIP. And so now my role as ambassador was also to make sure that they were put on government scholarships, from the scholarships that we had organized. So managing food and culture and language was not difficult, because a member of my staff, for example, who was in Moscow, was called Zilore Mumba. He had studied in the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
He had a master's degree, and he spoke Russian very fluently. But we also had employed an official interpreter.
Oh, that made it easy for
Which
official.
made it easier. So if the official interpreter said something which I didn't say, the Royal Mumba would say, what the ambassador said is this. So we were able to balance up, and we had an interpreter. It was so much easier to deal with it because of that situation. And I remember when I met the president of the then Soviet Union, Anastas Mikoyan, when I presented my credentials, he said, how does a young man like you know so much about the world? Because what we are discussing now, young people in this country, they don't know anything. I said, well, I was trained and prepared for this job. So I'm one of the very fortunate ones to have been trained. So my training paid off, not just for me personally, but also for the country.
Mhm.
It paid off for the country.
Did you at all learn any foreign language other than English in your
Well, a
time as
little
a
bit of
diplomat?
French, a little bit of Russian at that time.
Yeah.
But that was about it. And we always had interpreters, because even in their own countries, like in Russia, the leaders, they didn't know how to speak English. They needed interpreters.
Mhm.
China was a little bit different because the Chinese leaders like uh, Zhou Enlai, now called Zhou Enlai, the prime minister. He was educated in the West, in France, also in England. So he spoke English and he spoke French.
Both languages.
So it made it easier to communicate with them even in English. But officially, when you start the official discussions, they switch into Chinese because that is what their protocol requires. The interpreter should interpret.
Should interpret.
If the interpreter misinterprets what he says, he butts in and said, I actually said this. And then he goes back into Chinese.
Into Chinese. Now, Dr. Mwaanga, back in 1976, you started Leopards Hill Secondary School?
Yes.
Mhm.
1976, I started Leopards Hill Secondary School. At that time, I was in collaboration with the late Edward Jack Shamwana, who was such counsel, who was my lawyer. And we talked about it first, and we both agreed that that was the right thing for us to do. We went to visit the plot of land in Ibex here, which is next to the U.S., now the U.S. Embassy.
The U.S. Embassy.
At that time, there were no buildings there.
It was just
It was
a
all
bush.
bush. So we bought 100 acres of that plot, and we said we wanted the school to be there. And a lot of people were saying why do you want to put the school in the bush? We said, no, we've seen the master plan. This area will be built up, and so it will all be built up. It won't
Be isolated.
And we started fundraising. We donated money ourselves, then we started fundraising. And I asked some of my friends in America, Sidney Poitier, I'm sure you've heard of Sidney Poitier. The famous actor, was the first black actor to win an Oscar. And Harry Belafonte, they were close personal friends of mine. I asked them to donate some money to the school, and each one of them donated $100,000.
Wow.
And we started building the school. While started building and trying to build a board of trustees. We called it a board of trustees because we didn't want board members to earn any director's fees.
Okay.
It was not going to be a profit-making venture. It was a venture which was going to be used to educate children, as to supplement government effort in the field of education. Unfortunately, my colleague Edward Shamana was then arrested and charged with treason, and he was sent to prison. So I remained, and appointed a board of trustees, and we started, recruited the principal, who was an American. The first principal was an American. We started recruiting teachers, and then when we had finished phase one of the school opened, and we had something like 250 students to start with. And all the fees which were paid to the school were going back into the school. None of us earned not even a question. And we continued the building phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and fencing off the plot. And the parents then approached me as chairman of the board, and they said that they wanted the board to consider establishing boarding facilities for students, because they were tired of dropping off their children every morning and having to pick them up
later. Yes.
So I said, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I put it to the board. The board said that they agreed. So I suggested that we sell 30 acres of the land and put up boarding facilities, which we did. And we put up boarding facilities for the school, and it was a very popular decision, and a lot of students came. At one time, we had 23 nationalities at the school, and we had over 1,200 students at the school.
Yes.
And my son, Vernon Mwaanga Jr., went to that school.
Okay.
And my
The diplomat?
Yes, he's a diplomat now.
Okay.
But he went through that school from Form 1 up to Form 5. Maureen Nkandu, I'm sure you know, the famous broadcaster.
We've actually had her on this show.
We have had her on this show.
We had such a good show with her, yes.
She's a graduate from that school. She was there from Form 1 up to Form 5. My late uncle Elijah Mdenda's son, my uncle Elijah was Prime Minister here, as you know. His son, Chirombi Mdenda, also went to the same school. My son's children, my grandchildren, 3 of my grandchildren also went through the same school. So we ran the school, we had acquired a good reputation. Our results were always among the best 7 results in the country. Wow. The worst we did was 7th position in the country. Otherwise, we were number 2, number 3, number 5, number 6, number 4. So we had very good results, and we had very good teachers who ran the school. But a few years ago, in 2018, I said I had been chairman of the board, started the school 76. I was feeling fatigued.
Yes.
And I had to share my time between doing government work as a minister and schoolwork, which I didn't abandon. Sometimes would have board meetings of the school in my office as foreign minister or as minister of information. I said, no, I've had enough. And for nearly 40 years as chairman.
It's too much.
I said that we should hand over the school to the Catholics if they're interested. So I approached the Jesuits, and I knew their reputation in the field of education, and I offered them the school. They said, oh, if we can agree on the price. I said, no, don't talk about the price for now. I just want to know if you're interested in the school. And sitting right here where we are, that's where we signed the agreement the day I told them the school is being given to you free of charge.
Oh, you gave it free of charge?
Free of charge. Not one kwacha changed hands. And it's now called St. Ignatius College. It's now a college, and the academic reputation of the school has continued.
That's great. Now, Dr. Mwaanga, there's a time that there was a presidential order for your arrest.
Yes.
On allegation of drug trafficking.
Yes.
Can we speak about that?
Yes. In fact, I wrote a book which was called The Other Society. I was detained together with a few others, and charged. It was alleged that I was involved in drug trafficking. But that case could not stand, because when after the commission had been appointed and I appeared before the commission, they found no reasonable cause for me to continue to be held in detention, and I was subsequently released without being charged or without being convicted.
But where did it come from? Someone was being malicious?
Yes, well, I realized that in my position in the jobs which I held as foreign minister twice, minister of information 3 times, at my age, people started making statements, oh, why is this young man being given so many important positions? At one time, Newsweek magazine, 1979 or thereabouts, they published a list of potential world leaders, 100 potential world leaders, Newsweek magazine. And from Africa south of the Sahara, there were 2, myself and Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki was then finance minister of Kenya. He went on to become president.
Yes.
I was foreign minister here. So when that appeared, I didn't even know it had appeared. The first person who told me about it was Dr. Henry Kissinger, who was Secretary of State in the US at the time. He sent me, oh, my friend, congratulations for a big. So I said, what is he congratulating me? So I contacted the ambassador in Washington. He said, yes, the article has appeared in. And then they did one, they sent one for me very quickly. The magazines, they sent a few magazines, which I read, and my name and my picture were there. So they started alleging to the president that this young man has been campaigning to take over from you as president. So you see now, they're even putting him as a potential leader of the country.
But you weren't campaigning? No.
No, I was not. I had never campaigned. Never. No, if anything at all, when MMD was formed, if I had wanted to be president, I would have probably become president. But I didn't want to be president. The inner circle of the MMD, they called me and President Chirola. They said, between you 2, we want one of you to be president. Since you have good friends, you should go and discuss it amongst yourselves and agree on who should be the president. I said, okay, we'll discuss it. They didn't know that Frederick Chiruba was staying in my house. Because during the campaigns, Frederick Chiruba was president of the Zambia Congress of Trade Unions,
yes.
Based in Dollar. So each time he came for MMD meetings, he stayed in my house. That's how good a friend he was. So I said, we'll go and discuss it at home. We went home, we had supper. After supper, we discussed it. And I said to him, my brother, I am not interested in the position of president. I am not interested in the position of president. I will nominate you for president. He was in shock. He said, I wanted to nominate you because you have had more experience than I have. I said, no, you gained experience on the job.
But why did you nominate him, though?
Why did I nominate him?
And not yourself? I mean, everyone aspires when they get into politics. At least a lot of people I know, they aspire to, be president at one point.
I didn't have any such ambitions. My ambition was always to serve.
Okay.
To save the country. That is why in my book, An Extraordinary Life, which is my autobiography, the subtitle is A Passion for Service. My passion has always been service. Service for the country. Service for the people of this country. So I have never had any ambitions to become president. So when we went back to meet the inner circle of MMD to tell them that I'm the one who reported, I said, we discussed the matter, we have agreed that that Frederick Chiruba is going to be the presidential candidate, and I will be the one to nominate him, and I'll be his campaign chairman. Everyone clapped and was surprised that I said our meeting lasted 20 minutes. There was nothing
take long
to
at all.
discuss. I'm not interested in. I've seen what presidents go through, and I didn't want to go through that. I felt that I could serve the country in other capacities. Services, not just the president's. There are so many other things that you can do for your country, and I believe that. And that is why, to date, I'm the only Zambian who has served as a cabinet minister under 4 presidents. 4 presidents.
It's actually 4. I had 3 here. So
4.
Yeah. But how was your relationship, and how did you work in government with President Chiluba? What kind of a person was he from a personal level?
Well, we were personal friends. Government was new to him, but he was always willing to learn. When he was in doubt about something, he always consulted. He said, no, how is this done? How was this done before? And why? So he was willing to learn, and he was a good communicator, as you know. He was also an orator.
Yeah.
And he knew how to communicate with the grassroots. Each time he spoke to the grassroots, he resonated. He was able to communicate with them in a language they understood. And he was a great orator. He's probably the greatest orator president that we've had since independence. So he was willing to learn, and also willing to balance up appointments, to reflect one Zambia, one nation, because I told him that that's what we fought for. We freedom fighters fought for one Zambia, one nation. So it was a great pleasure for me to work with him. I was his campaign chairman. Unfortunately, we had to campaign against Dr. Kaunda in 1991. And the first election we had, October 31st, 1991. Results out of 100, of which I was the chairman of the campaign for MMD, the results were Frederick Chiluba's 74%, KK 24%.
Wow.
Of the vote.
It's a huge margin.
In Parliament, out of 150, MMD 125, and UNIP 25. 19 of those seats from Eastern Province alone. One province, Eastern Province. And so we began to establish our own credentials. And we debated a number of issues, including the issue of tenure of office of the president.
The president, yes.
My views were that the presidential tenure of office should always be 5 years, renewable for another 5 years. No person should serve more than 10 years.
More than 10 years.
The years of Wamuyaya are gone, never to come back. They should never, ever come back. So we agreed on tenure of office, 2 terms of 5 years. That is why in 2001, when Frederick Chiluba wanted to run for a 3rd term, I told him, if you go for a 3rd term, I'm resigning today to chair the campaign against the 3rd term. And I think that frightened him because he knew my campaign capabilities. And he said, no, I just wanted to encourage the debate. And that split our party, it enabled others to go and form their own party.
Their own political
they split
parties.
from MMD as a result of that campaign for a 3rd term, which shouldn't have taken place. But, well, that happened. And when I warned President Chiluba that would not work, finally he accepted, and he didn't stand. So it was decided that we should find another person to stand as Republican president. So at that time, I had become Secretary General of MMD. We encouraged people who were interested to apply so that the National Executive Committee of 48 members would decide, because that's what the MMD Constitution said. So we had 6 applicants, and my memory serves me right. We had Levi Manasa, we had Eric Suwamba, we had Michael Sata, we had Emmanuel Kasonde, we had Chitalo Sampa, we also had Ino Kavindere, 6. And so we said, well, that's fine. Although we, as a party, we prefer Levi Manawasa, but let the National Executive Committee make a decision.
Make a decision, yes.
And the National Executive Committee met under the MMD Constitution. For a person to be president of the party, they needed to get 51%, not 50 plus 1, but 51% of the vote. And Chiluba got 63.6% on the first ballot. So it was all over.
This is the Kenny T One-on-One podcast brought to you by MTN, Yatu T, and Betika. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. This is the Kenny T One-on-One podcast brought to you by Yatu T and Betika. Dr. Mwaanga, there's a time that you stood as MP.
Yes.
In Mwansha. You stood twice.
Twice.
Yes.
Yes. That was in 1991, after the first multi-party elections, which were held 31st October 1991. I was put in charge of elections. I chose myself Rwanda constituency in Rwanda. And a lot of people started asking me questions. Why are you going to Rwanda? Why don't you go and stand in Choma? I said, you're mentioning Choma because I'm from Choma. I said, no, I'm a nationalist. I can stand anywhere in Zambia and win. And I stood in Ron. I set up committees in Ron to campaign. I would spend 1 week in Ron and 1 week campaigning with the president, since I was his campaign
chairman, yes.
1 week in Rwanda, 1 week on the presidential campaign. Even with that, come 31st October 1991, I got 92.6% of the vote.
That's very high.
Defeating the incumbent from UNIP, who was from that constituency. And so I said to the people questioning the legitimacy of my decision, that you can see that I won in Ron, getting 92% of the votes. So I can stand anywhere in Zambia and win because I'm a nationalist.
Dr. Mwaanga, I wanted to speak about some of the notable policy reforms, during your time with President Chiluba. Yes. Anything you think we could speak about?
Yes, I think one of the most notable reforms was that we had inherited an economy which was not growing. We had inherited an economy where we had, for example, nationalization. The mines had been nationalized. A number of enterprises had been nationalized. The state controlled nearly 80% of the national economy. The private sector only controlled 20%. And some of the mines were on care and maintenance because they were not able to find money to reinvest in the mines which they were running. And we made a major decision, one of the first decisions we made, which was also in our manifesto, that we would denationalize copper mines and other enterprises. And for sure, we did. At the first meeting of cabinet, we formed a cabinet privatization committee and then an official committee to privatize the mines. And we started the process of privatization, to privatize the mines, where the mines would be owned by a majority of foreigners. The country would own a certain percentage of these mines, and to revive the mining industry so that the industry could continue to grow and to get the economy to start growing. And we denationalized a number of other enterprises. It created more employment, more jobs, more revenue, and because government revenue, the 20% private sector under the nationalized industries were contributing 80% of company taxes. The 80% were contributing 20%. We thought that it should be the
other way around.
And it became the other way around after the nationalization took place. And we started working on a number of other important projects like universities and roads, improving the agricultural sector, giving them more incentives so that they could produce more. At that time, we had started, under UNIP, we had started importing food, maize from outside Zambia. We said, no, we have capacity to produce. We give our farmers better incentives, they produce more so that we can become self-sufficient. We're self-sufficient. Now we're more than self-sufficient. And at this point in time, this year, for example, our production it's just under 5 million tons of maize, and which is much above the national requirement. So therefore, I have a decision to make whether to sell part of the maize to create room in the storage facilities. Otherwise, there will not be enough storage for the maize. So we made a number of important decisions, regarding development and regarding nationalization.
Just before we speak about, the tenure of office for the late President Mwaana, I want us to talk about your books.
Yes.
The first book, the second. Just really quickly, tell us about the first book up to the last book that you wrote, so we understand what the books are about and where one can find them if they wanted to buy.
The first book I wrote was called An Extraordinary Life. And this is a book about my life and my personal life. I go into a lot of details regarding the marriages that I've had, which have broken. Pleasant thing now is that I've been married to my present wife for the last 24 years. This is the longest marriage I've had, and I think at my age, I don't think that I've got capacity to continue it.
Which one was the shortest?
One of the marriages I had was one of the shortest. I had married women from different parts of Zambia, Western, Northern, Eastern. So my nationalism took me everywhere.
Okay.
And so I have relatives in nearly all the provinces through these marriages. I've got nieces and nephews and uncles. And my first wife was Mporokoso, from Chief Mporokoso's area as part of Chitumukulu's kingdom. And so even when we were no longer married, each time I went on tour to Northern Province to pay a courtesy call on Chitumukulu, he would say, no, this one, I'll give him priority because he's a member of my family, because for us, we don't recognize that divorce. He's still part of us.
Yeah.
So those things continued. When I go to Western Province, the Ritunga still treats me with the same respect that he used to treat me with before. So nothing much has changed in terms of that. So that book is about my career, my life, including personal issues. And there's a very funny part of it. When I was getting married, I think a second or third time, we invited Dr. Kaunda to come and be the guest of honor. He made a statement there and he said, young man, read my lips. This is the last time I'll ever attend your marriage.
Were you having white weddings? All of them?
No, not all of them, but
okay.
that one was a white wedding.
Okay.
And one of his sons was my best man.
Which one?
Dr. Kaunda.
Yeah.
So KK made a public statement that he would not attend any other marriage if I was going to divorce that woman. Unfortunately, I did. And I remembered not to invite him.
All right, now, Dr. Mwaanga, your second book, what was it
My
about?
second book was about The Long Sunset, was about the issues, burning issues in Africa. Democracy, for example. I talked about slavery and democracy and one-party systems, the advantages of multi-party systems, the important non-alignment, that non-alignment is not the same as neutrality. It's not neutrality. And we talked about issues, current issues in the world, and how we faced them, and how we dealt with them. So it was the first book was 460 something pages. The next one, The Other Society, was The Long Sunset, was about my time in prison when I was detained. After the allegations had been made. I say in that book, what I say in the book is that an allegation remains an allegation until it is proven. And if you don't prove it, then the allegation must die there.
You're in prison for how long?
7 months.
That's a long time.
Without trial, yeah. Without being brought to trial.
That must have been very difficult. I mean,
it was difficult. It was very difficult. But I told the President Kaunda that I would not hold it against him. And I continued to treat him with respect. And that is why even after MMD won, when I went to see President Kaunda, I found him almost in tears after he lost. He took it very badly. But I say to him, Mr. President, don't take it personally. This decision of the people is based on their desire for a change in the political system. It has nothing to do with you personally. So don't take it personally, please. Then I asked him, I said, how are you going to manage your life? Because during your government, when you were in government, you did not make any provision for benefits for former presidents. How are you going to manage to live? Do you have enough money to live? He said, to tell you the truth, he always called me young man. Young man, to tell you the truth, I don't know how I'm going. By the grace of God, do you have enough money? He said, no, I don't have enough money. Then he buzzed the private secretary to bring his bank statement. They brought his bank statement, they gave it to him. Then he gave it to me. And I looked at it. There was $8,100. So I said to him, don't tell me that that's all the money we have. And he saw the African way, holding the ground. He said, that is all the money I have. You have been head of the intelligence service. You can ask the service to investigate if I got any money anywhere. I didn't tell him that I would, but I did. We investigated everywhere, Switzerland, UK, US, all of them. There was nothing.
That's the only money.
They came with that money. So I said to him, but you can't live on this with the family that you have. So that is how I went to President Chiluba to propose that we should come up with benefits of former presidents. That is how that law
came into being.
Because I had been to countries as foreign minister, by the way. I've been to 146 countries in the world.
Wow.
47 of them in Africa. No? I've been to countries where they have these benefits. So I said, let me go there and get their legislation so that we can benefit from some of the things in their legislation, which he allowed me to do. And I brought it, and Levi Monawasa and I, we put a layman's draft together, which went to cabinet, and then it went to the Ministry of Legal Affairs for legal drafting, then to Parliament. And that is how it became law.
Now, in that case, if you're part of the team that, drafted this into law, in this case, I'd like to just relate it to, the funeral and the burial of the late President Edgar Lungu.
Yes.
What's your take on that in as far as, the law and how you understand it should be is concerned?
Well, it is unfortunate that the family took the wrong route, in my view. When President Kaunda died, Edgar Lungu was the president. The Kaunda family wanted to bury KK next to his wife at their farm. Edgar Lungu issued a statement that no, the government protocol demands that the former presidents must be buried at the former president's burial site in front of cabinet office. And that is where Dr. Kaunda was buried. So what has changed? All the former presidents are buried there. Why is President Lungu, why did they say that he couldn't be buried there? That is what he told the Kaunda family himself. And he made a statement in Parliament explaining how former presidents are buried. I've got a government a Hansard, a parliamentary Hansard, where he made a statement to explain how former presidents are supposed to be buried, and that they're supposed to be buried at the burial ground in front of cabinet office, where other presidents are buried. So what has changed? Nothing has changed.
Maybe does the family have the right to sort of like decide where they'd want, their relative, in this case, our former president, to be buried? And then also, I think they set out some conditions. And now speaking to somebody who was saying, no, if the president is not present at a former president's funeral, it doesn't make it...
it's not a state funeral.
It's not a state funeral. So maybe you could explain.
It's a state funeral because the president is there. Mm-hmm. And like now, we have a former vice president who died. He has been given a state funeral, which means the president will be there to attend at least the church part of it, the state funeral service. And the state funeral services are held at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. So if the family didn't want him to be buried there, the least they could have done, or the most they could have done, is to negotiate, have private negotiations with government.
So I think there were some negotiations.
Not private negotiations. There were public negotiations done through their lawyers who were very vocal and very, very, very open, talking about everything in public. They could have negotiated publicly. But really, there was no justification, in my view, for the family to refuse Edgar Lungu to be buried where the other presidents are buried, because that is exactly the same law he gave the Kaunda family. Between the Kaunda family and the Lungu family, which family is more important? The Kaunda family is more important. He was the father of the nation. But even he was subjected to those rules. Edgar Lungu should have been buried where other former presidents are buried and given a dignified funeral, like all the other former presidents have been given dignified funeral. What has been happening is embarrassing. He died on the 5th of June, 2025, more than a year ago. And to think that he hasn't been buried up to now, that is absolutely unbelievable. It's an embarrassment to Zambia. Everywhere you go, they're asking, what is wrong with you people, you Zambians? Why are you not burying your former presidents? And that is very difficult to explain. They had put conditions. Some of the conditions they had put, the president should not be there, or that charges against Mrs. Lungu and Tsala Lungu should be dropped, the ones that are in court. Those are conditions you negotiate privately. You cannot negotiate those publicly. So in my view, it is a very unfortunate incident. I hope it does not ever happen again, because it's an embarrassment to the country.
Dr. Mwaanga, your time with the late president, former president, Levi Mwanawasa, you were his campaign manager.
Yes.
What message did you deliver to the people? I'm saying this because obviously we're in an election period. In the next few weeks, we go to vote. What message did you deliver to the Zambian people that made them vote for him?
Well, that we wanted development to be given first priority, that we were going to fight against corruption, and that we wanted development to be evenly spread across the provinces of Zambia, all the provinces of Zambia, and that we wanted to concentrate on development and not on politics. That was the main message which went around the country, and I think the people understood what Levi Mwanawasa was saying at that time, because after he was elected president, he approached me at one point and said he wanted help for me to help him recommend a vice president. And I asked him to tell me what qualifications, what kind of qualities he was looking for in a vice president. And after he had described what he wanted someone mature, who has had experience in government, more elderly, that was not politically ambitious, and someone who would not force him to look over his shoulders to see what he was doing behind him, his back. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I think I'll come up with a suggestion. The following day, I went there with a suggestion. I said, I recommend that you have Rupia Banda. And he meets the qualifications that you've just explained. And I think he will make a very good vice president. They said, what, you have his biodata? I said, yes, here. I gave it to him. I said, he's been in government, private sector. He's been in the diplomatic service. He's been a minister. He has run NAMBORD as general manager. So he meets those qualifications. He has been ambassador to Egypt, USA, UN. So I said, I think this is the person. He's now at his farm in Chipata. He said, no, you call him. So I had to call Rupia Banda to come and to go to State House. And he was offered the job of vice president. He became president. And when the time after Mwanawasa died, at that time we had not changed the constitution as to make it what it is today. It required that to elect to have a president, we had to have a presidential by-election. So I said to my colleagues in MMD, why should we have another person? We have a vice president who has been serving under Mwanawasa. Let's let him just complete the tenure of office of Levy. Let's ask Rupia Banda to run as president. And he had to run as president, and he won. And he managed to complete the tenure of office of president. What surprised me was that after he had finished his tenure of office as president, towards the end, he then approached people and said no, he wanted to run for another tenure. The agreement I had with him was that he would only run until he had finished Levi Mwanawasa's tenure of office, that he was old, he didn't want to continue. But then he changed his mind.
But the constitution allowed him to.
There was no constitutional issue. Mm-hmm.
It's just the agreement that you had.
It is just the agreement he had with the party.
Okay.
And I felt that, well, if that's the agreement you have, then you can appoint your own campaign team. And I said, I'm not going to chair that campaign. And I didn't. It was chaired by Boniface Kawimbe and one other guy. And so he asked me to assess the situation, to make a projection about 2 months before the election. I said, we're going to lose. We're losing the election. He brought in not just Kawimbe, but also his children to manage the campaign funds and the campaign material, distribution of chitenges. There was a lot of chitenge. I said, but how can we lose? We've spent so much money on campaign material. I said, the campaign materials don't vote, The people vote are those ones at the market. The ones you see at the market, those are the voters, not the chitenges. So I did a reassessment of the projection after a month. Said the situation still remains the same. In fact, it's getting worse. 2 weeks before, I told him it's even worse now. And Voting day, I was Secretary General then. I took a written statement to Arabi to ask him to concede defeat once the results were announced. He said, "You mean it's that bad?" I said, "Yes, we're losing this election."
But how was he taking it?
Very badly.
Usually when you go to people, they feel almost like you're not with them.
He felt that I was not supporting him. I said, "No, but I've been campaigning for you. I've been addressing meetings, some of them with you, some of them on my own. So, but if you don't believe me, that's up to you. You'll see what happens." And he even went so far as to attack me publicly on a program, a movie TV program, where he criticized.
What did he say?
Well, he said, "No, I didn't have the support of such useful and important friends of mine like Vijay Mwaanga. No, he didn't support my candidate." And fortunately, I appeared on movie TV and I refuted that. And I produced evidence to show addressing meetings in support of Arabi. After that had appeared, Arabi came to me and apologized. I also apologized that I had to respond, but only because he did it without consulting me. And we as good friends, we found a way of
resolving
the issue, and we continued our brotherhood. Because even when Arabi got married, I was his best man. Oh. And I introduced him to his first wife, Hope Makulu, who died of cancer, and they got married in 1965. And I was ambassador in the Soviet Union. I had to come back and be best man to Arabi. That's how close we were.
The late President Michael Sata's campaign, I'm told they wanted you to be a part of it, and you declined?
Yes, I declined.
Any reason behind that?
Well, Michael Sata, he wanted to be president within MMD. But when MMD didn't choose him, he went and formed his own party, PF. So, I mean, for us, we came from MMD, and I couldn't possibly go and campaign for him. But after Michael Sata had won the presidency in 2011, he called me, and he wanted me to be part of his cabinet. And he said to me, "Have you seen the cabinet I've appointed?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You always tell me the truth. What do you think of the cabinet?" So I said to him, "You really want me to tell you the truth?" He said, "Yes." I said, "It is mediocre, you know?"
Why did you feel that way?
Because it was mediocre. The people he was appointing who came from nowhere, no experience in anything. He said, "But Mwana," we used to call each other Mwana. "These are the people who are elected. What else could I have done? That's why I've called you. You have served 4 presidents before. I want you to serve the 5th one. I want you to become a minister under my government, presidential affairs, so that you can help me with interministerial coordination." I said to him, "I can't. I'm not able to do that. I don't even know what you stand for. In PF, I'm still MMD, and I don't know what you stand for." And then jokingly, I said to him, "Mana, knowing how abrupt you are in making decisions, 2 things could happen. You'll either fire me or I'll resign, like I've done in the past. So I think you better just appoint people who agree, who support what you're doing." So I declined. He said, "But what about advice, giving me advice?" I said, "Yes, advice. I'm prepared to give you advice." And I said, "We only have one president at a time. If the president of the country asks me for advice, I'll give you advice based on the experience that I've gained." And it didn't take long for him to ask me for advice regarding China. And I told him, regarding China, you cannot, there is nothing you can do, because he was being supported by Taiwan.
Yes.
The POF was being funded by Taiwan. And he had promised Taiwan that they would establish diplomatic relations. I said, you can't do that. I said, in Africa at the moment, there are 3 countries only which still have relations with Taiwan. The rest have relations with
China.
with the People's Republic of China. The whole world is going to China. How can you have, I said, you can't do that. He said, but how can I repair the damage? I said, you do a letter to the president of China to apologize to him. And so that you can be forgiven, and tell him that you maintain normal relations. He said, are you able to do the letter for me? I said, yes. So I came here. I have an office here. I did the draft. I took it to him. And I said, you can ask President Kaunda, the elder statesman, with 2 or 3 of your ministers to go to China and deliver this letter to the president of China and add his own apology on your behalf. And that's exactly what happened.
Great, because we saw, I think, a few weeks after he went into office, he actually hosted the Chinese at the,
Yes,
at State House.
absolutely.
Yes.
So that was the turnaround.
Hmm.
And the Chinese businessmen had become very tense after he won, because they didn't know whether they were going or whether they will continue to be accepted, by Michael Sada, because he wanted to replace them with Taiwan.
Now, Dr. Mwaanga, there's a big question. In your early years, Tsala Muana was big, and I know that you get this question all the time. And you were in government at the time, and everyone was very surprised at how you'd have dated such a big music sensation. You had a relationship with her.
Yes.
Did you marry her?
Yes, I had a relationship with her, which started some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we maintained the relationship for quite some time, and I was single at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the period when I had these long periods of being single.
Mm-hmm.
A single father, and I had children to look after, but I did manage to look after them even as a single parent. So we maintained this relationship, and I remember people, each time she came here to stage concerts, they would rush to go and see our concerts, and after the concert, and I remember some of them, like, I don't want to mention names, they would say, no, why don't we take you out for dinner or take you out for a drink? Or he said, no, in Zambia, I see only one person in Zambia, that's VJ. I don't see anyone else, but if the girls I'm with are willing to be taken out, that's up to them. But me, I have to go and meet BJ. So they even nicknamed her Tsala Muana.
Oh wow! But how long did that relationship last?
Some years, a few years. It lasted a few years, and unfortunately, she passed on. And I sent a message to our family to convey condolences. And by then, the relationship had broken. So, yes, we had a relationship, and a lot of people are very jealous of that relationship. And they did everything possible to try and break it, but they didn't succeed. Not only that, there were also so many false rumors about it, and they secretly got married, all this. I said, no, we didn't get married. Yes, Tsala Muana wanted to get married to me, but I didn't want to get married.
Why?
To her, because I felt that my position and getting married to a musician would not be the right thing to do.
Also, her dressing on stage, I think her signature was a long skirt with a long slit reaching here. So
yeah.
all of that, a lot of men used to like to go there and see that.
Yeah, I know. So I said, no, I wouldn't consider that. And so we didn't, the marriage issue died. And it died because I wasn't for it.
Did you sometimes travel to Congo to see her?
No.
Or was she based there?
Well, she was based in the Congo, and when I went on duties to the Congo, would see her. But she would come sometime. I would invite her to come, and she would come here, and we would go to Kariba or Livingstone, to Falls, just to go and visit. And sometime she had a flat in Paris. If I was in Europe sometime and she was in Paris, I would go to Paris and would meet there. So it was a very solid relationship at that time.
Great. I'll take you back to the politics. One important question. There were rumors at that time that a lot of politicians like to involve you in their campaigns because, there was allegations of vote rigging.
Vote rigging.
More like you specialized in it in some way, allegedly.
Yes, I've heard about that rigging story. Yes, they accused me of rigging. I remember Sata was one of those in the forefront.
Oh.
I even still keep videos of him. When he lost the election, he said, "Go and ask VJ. He's the one who rigged the election for me to lose."
Yeah.
And so when I met Sata, I said, if you were not my friend, I would have sued you to take you to court to go and prove that I rigged the election. So after the election, the Sata election, it was being alleged by him that on that day that I was in Kasama, busy rigging elections. As soon as I voted, I came home. I voted on a Thursday. I never went out of this house. I was just here at home, watching TV and working in my office. And I think I was writing one of these books. And for him to allege that I was voting, I said, "You produce the evidence." They went to court where I was named as the tour of the election. VJ Mwaanga rigged this election. I decided to appear in court before the Supreme Court myself, in person, to get them to prove that I rigged the election. I said, "Have you been to the Electoral Commission of Zambia?" They asked me. I said, "No." I said, "I don't even know what their email address is. I've not had any dealings with the Electoral Commission myself, apart from attending meetings which they called to brief heads of campaign committees of different political parties. I've not been to the Electoral Commission." And they failed to prove their case. The case collapsed. So it was a lie. It was an absolute lie. I have never rigged an election in my life. I only know how to campaign. I know how to organize election campaigns. This happened once when I went to help a friend in Malawi. The late President Mutharika, Bingu Mutharika, he asked me to go and help him look at his campaign structures and advise his campaign team. So when I went, I looked at the campaign team. First of all, then I said, I was a minister then. I said, "You better ask my boss, Arabi, because I cannot leave this country to come and advise you unless he gives me permission." So the two presidents talked, and then after they finished, Arabi called me and said, "Please go and help our friend to reorganize his." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And I went to Malawi. And Bingwa Mutharika, out of 193 members of parliament, at that time they only had 7. When he was appointed president, they had 7. So I looked at the campaign structures, which was ending at the district level. I said, no, elections are not won at the district level. The campaign structures must go right up to the smallest unit. You have the national campaign committees, then provincial campaign committees, then district campaign committees, then constituents campaign committees, then ward campaign committees, then branch campaign committees, then polling station campaign committees. It must go from the national level up to the smallest unit, which is the polling station. So he said, "Can you reorganize our charts?" I reorganized the chart they created these committees, and my role was to travel with him when he went to address meetings, just to make sure that these new committees which had been formed were there and that they were operating, you know.
Mm.
And come the election, Bingu wa Mtarika, they won 127 seats. Then the rumor started, oh, there was a chief rigger from Zambia who rigged the election for Bingu. What did I do? I never went anywhere near the Electoral Commission to tamper with their figures. I didn't go anywhere near there. I never made an attempt to rig any election. That would be a criminal thing to do, because it would be a way of disregarding the opinion of the voters. The election belongs to the voters. The people who vote are the ones who decide. And once they've decided, their vote is final. For me, I'm just an analyst. I'm an election campaign specialist. I've been recognized as such by a number of other countries that I've helped, just to manage their campaigns and their structures so that they address issues right up to the smallest units, which is the polling stations. I've never rigged an election, and those accusations, you know, the people who make them, they carry pseudonyms, because I would have sued them to go to court to come and prove that allegation.
Let's speak about family. Mrs. Mwaanga, how did you meet her?
Well, I met her initially when I was in prison, in detention. I was not an ordinary prisoner. I was classified as a detainee. This is if you don't have a criminal case, you have not been convicted yet. You're a detainee. And when I used to go for physiotherapy at UTH, that is where I first met her. But although I had met her much earlier, although I didn't pay much attention to her at that time, because there were schoolmates with my youngest sister, Rose. They were at Kabulonga Girls Secondary School together from Form 1 up to Form 5. And my wife then, Edna Banda, she was a Banda. She was then the head girl at Kabulonga. And they used to come to my house with my sister, but I didn't pay any attention to her. But I started paying attention to her when I used to go for physiotherapy. And we developed an informal relationship, which then continued and later on resulted into marriage.
What did you say to her when you met her and you made a decision to say, this is the one?
Well, I just said to her, well, I think you know why I've called you. You know by now, based on the way our eyes have been looking at each other, that I'm going to propose something. I'd like to propose to you that you marry me. You be my wife. She had been married as well before. But I said, before you agree, I'll tell you that I have excess baggage. I've been married 5 times. I've got so many children, so many grandchildren, great-grandchildren. These are part of my life. There is no way I can discard them because they're part of me. If you're not comfortable with that, tell me, then we will not go ahead with the marriage. I'll let you go your way and I'll go my way. I'll find someone else to marry. Go and think about it. She thought about it and said that she agreed. So we got married, and for sure she has treated all of them equally.
That's very nice. I mean, your children, obviously we know that Vijay Jr. is a diplomat.
Yes.
That should make you very proud, because it looks like he's walking your path.
Well, yeah, I'm walking my path from a distance. He's first secretary. I was never first secretary. I joined at the level of deputy high commissioner for a year, less than a year, and then I became ambassador. So I told him, I said, you're still very far away from me. I tease him. I always tease him about that. But he was in Kenya before. He was deputy. He was first secretary at the Zambia High Commission in Kenya. Now he's in Sweden.
Okay.
So I always wish him the best and to be serious with his work. And I've spent a lot of time explaining a lot of things to him. But he also had an elder son by the name of Gordon, who passed away
I'm sorry to hear
some
that.
years ago.
Mm.
And then the second born was Mwaanga, who is very famous because he's a socialite.
Yes.
He's a socialite. I always get calls, from people. Oh, have you seen what is on Facebook? I said, no. What is on Facebook?
People actually call you?
Oh, yes. They call me and they send me messages. They send me what appears on Facebook. They send it on my WhatsApp.
And then how do you handle that?
I said to them, I said, Mwaanga, yes, he's my son, but he's 59 years old. He'll be 60 years very soon.
Uh-huh.
I cannot control his life. He controls his own life. If that is the life he has chosen, so be it. When I meet Mwaanga, I always tell him what you are doing is very wrong. At your age, you should be the one giving advice to your young brothers. But instead, you are in the forefront of doing what you're doing. Look at what is on Mwaanga. Even if he visits here, if he pays me a visit, he paid me a visit only, I think, last week.
I saw pictures on his page.
Last week or
for your birthday.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the next day it was, he had already posted pictures on his Facebook page.
Yeah.
And that he has visited me. But it was the first time I was seeing Mwaanga since last year in December. He lives in Lusaka. But it was the first time I was seeing him. But so everyone, oh, we've seen you and Mwaanga. Where? I said, on
Facebook.
Then they started sending me photos. I said, oh my God. But that is Mwaanga. There's nothing I can do to change him.
But you've got a good relationship with him.
Oh, yes. We have what I may call a correct relationship. In diplomacy, you have good relationship, bad relationship, and a correct relationship.
Wow, correct relationship. We are learning. We're learning. Dr. Mwaanga, you recently, you could correct me if I'm wrong, you recently made a statement that the current president is winning the election.
Yes.
Do you still stand by that? And
yes,
what are some of the factors that you're using to come to such a conclusion?
I've been making election projections since 1991. I've got a group of people that I work with in the districts and in the provinces. Some of them are teachers, some of them are farmers, some of them are health workers, and they monitor events, situation, and we compare notes with me and my WhatsApp. And from all the indications that I have received, without going into percentages, the conclusion that I've come to is that the current president is going to win come the 13th of August 2026, because all the signs are going in his favor. First of all, one of the reasons is that the major opposition party here used to be PF. But if you look at the ballot once the ballots have been published, you will not see PF on the ballot. There's no PF on the ballot. There is no PF on the ballot. Because PF has split into various splinter groups and various small groups. This group is campaigning on its own. This group is this other group is supporting UPND, supporting HH. The opposition, they have split. Their own worst enemy. And indications are that the people will give HH another term of office to continue his vision for Zambia until 2031. So that is my projection, and every projection I've made since 1991 has been correct.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, every projection I've made has been correct. Even the projection I made about MMD losing.
Mm-hmm. So this has nothing to do with maybe your relationship with
No,
the
it has
president,
nothing
the
to
party.
do with the relationship with it.
Yeah, because so usually when you make such predictions, people, those that might be against such might start saying, "Oh no, maybe because you're friends and so forth." But I think
No,
your explanation sort of like clears it out.
I'm not even a member of UPND, but my last membership of a political party was MMD. Since MMD died, and I'm just a retiree. I watch the politics, I follow what is happening, and I project election results, and that is my projection. Every projection I've made has been correct. When I told Arabi that we're going to lose, he didn't believe me. And the results came and we lost. MMD lost that election. And 2021, I projected that HH would win by a big margin. And he won by 1 million votes, which had never happened in the history of Zambia. So my projections still stand. And I review it 2 weeks before, and then just before the voting. And I think that the situation is such that there'll be no need for me to change that projection.
Dr. Mwaanga, you have a street named after you near Garden City.
That's what I've heard, but no one has told me about it. I saw a photo of it on Facebook.
There's no official...
No.
Oh.
There's no official communication. They have not told me about it. Sometime back, one of the councillors told me that, the council is considering naming a street after you. So I said, well, for me, I'm not even interested in those street names. My struggle was not about being given street names. It was about saving the country, So I've seen a lot of people who are undeserving, who were given name streets a long time ago.
Yes.
And why would they want to give me a street now? 62 years after independence. Well, if they've done it, well and good, but I've not received any official communication.
Wow.
About it. But I've been told there's somewhere in Garden City. I don't even know where Garden City is myself.
Very important question. How would you like history and your family to remember you as Vernon Mwaanga?
Well, I'd like the family to remember me as someone who was caring, who was committed to family values. As someone who was open and frank about various issues, and as someone who cared for others. You won't believe that using personal resources, I've at least since the University of Zambia was established, I've funded 27 students from my own pocket.
Wow.
To enable them to go through university because their families could not afford to do that. Even at this school, which we talked about earlier,
yes,
I established a scholarship for at least 5 students every year from poor families to get into the field of education. And some of them come back or they meet me at functions and they're telling me, I'm a product of your school. So, from my school, so your program of scholarships, I was one of those who got a scholarship. So what are you doing now? I'm a medical doctor. I'm an engineer. I'm a professor. Or I'm an economist. It makes me very happy. Those are the things that make me happy. It gives me a sense of satisfaction just to support others, to make others feel that they too are relevant to this society. We have to raise each other up because that's what development is all about. We cannot build a country which does not care, where people don't care about one another. We must care about one another, and that is what builds countries. And that's what I've been known for in the family. So I do hope that I'll be remembered for the service that I've rendered selflessly. I left government without any audit query following me, even to say, oh, you didn't retire this interest, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. I said, no, government resources are government resources. And I left government with this. I only own this house where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only property I own. So it's, I've served with integrity, because that is what public service demands. It demands service with integrity. You can't have people who go into service, young people, especially young people, and I'm a strong believer in young people. I have faith that young people, once they understand what public service is, will do a good job taking this country forward. It's not about self, it's about country. Not about self, it's about country. Let us pay attention to the country and to the people who deserve our service. And that is what I want to be remembered for.
Dr. Mwaanga, what we do on our podcast is we ask our guests to ask any question to the next guest. And usually you won't even know who the guest is, because we don't know who the next guest is. Okay. And our previous guest left a question. They didn't know who our guest was. And your question reads, do Zambians truly and honestly, wholeheartedly, in the deepest sense, love their country?
I believe that a great majority of Zambians love their country. And you can see when there is a football match, you see them wearing Zambian colors, you see them going to stadiums, you see them supporting sport, you see them going to schools, going to attend meetings regarding community activities. It is my genuine belief that a great majority of the Zambians love their country. They love their country, and some of them are doing a lot to uplift the country even more. But some of them, of course, don't have the ability to do so. But I think that they love their country if they're given an opportunity to serve. And I served as a young man. I have always defended the appointment of young people to important positions, because I wanted them to emulate my example. I entered service as a young man. If I had failed in my duties, young people would not be considered for important positions. Today, they cannot say that young people have let us down, because I never let them down as a young person when I served. So the young people must rise to the occasion and contribute to the development and well-being of Zambia, and accept and embrace the national motto of one Zambia, one nation.
Well, what is your question to our next guest, Dr. Mwaanga?
Well, the question to your next guest will be...
any kind of question.
What is the GDP of Africa? What is the GDP
of Africa?
The 54 African countries that we have.
All right. My crew is laughing because probably they don't understand the question. They don't know what the answer is. So, someone wants to answer? Understood, guys. I mean, that was on a light note. The question is not for you. It's for our next guest. Dr. Mwaanga, I would like to thank you so much for allowing us in your beautiful home for sharing your very inspiring story. I'm personally very inspired, and I've heard your story. I've tried to follow the story, but today I've gotten the in-depth side of things, and I've understood things better. We're very grateful, and we know that people have actually enjoyed watching, our conversation today.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you all in my home, and please, I wish you all the very best. And I think that people learn one or two things from this program.
Absolutely. There you have it. This has been the Kenny T One-on-One podcast, brought to you by Yatu T and Betika. I'm back again next week. Same place, same space.